Welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman, and we're now at episode 33. Today's guest is Johnathan Allen. Johnathan is one of the younger guests that we've had on the podcast. He graduated from Ball State with his undergrad in 2004 and got his master's there in 2006. He is currently the program director, clinical coordinator at Union University in Jackson, Tennessee for athletic training. He also owns his own business called Pillar Active Medicine, and we'll get into both of those jobs in the podcast. But his story is really interesting and engaging, and Jonathan's just a great personality to talk to, so it should be a great podcast. So let's go off the roll with Johnathan Allen. Welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman, and we're here today with Johnathan Allen. Johnathan, Ball State grad, undergrad in 2004 and got his master's there in 2006, is currently the clinical coordinator. Are we calling you the program director now too, or are we still waiting on that?
Not yet.
Okay.
I got a full step paper. So.
Yeah, we'll say clinical coordinator at Union University in Jackson, Tennessee. Johnathan is a jack of all trades, master of all. I won't say master of none, but he's got a really interesting story and kind of what he does now with his own business. He's a private business owner as well. So we're going to talk to Johnathan. So Johnathan, welcome to Off the Roll.
Thanks, Troy. I appreciate getting a chance to come and talk. And I've been listening to these for a little while now after you and I chatted, and I'm honored to be asked to do this with the company you had on these other ones already. So
no, I think that I think we're going to find out that this is going to be a really popular podcast just because you have done and are still doing a lot of different unique things. So
I'm trying.
So we're going to start out here. Like I've asked all the guests on the podcast, is that kind of what was your first encounter or kind of what led you to kind of maybe get involved with athletic training? What was that experience that kind of led you in this direction?
Well, I think, I'm an Indiana guy from Southern Indiana. It's kind of that typical, you hear all the kids all saying, well, I got hurt or I played sports or whatever. And it was my dad actually that got hurt. He had torn his ACL and had some stuff done there with Dr. Klutvike in, I guess at Methodist Sports Medicine at the time.
Yeah.
Now it's IU Health, I think is who has it, or I'm not really sure.
Oh no, it's actually Franciscan now.
Oh, Franciscan now. Yeah, right. So
they're affiliated with Franciscan.
Okay,
it's called Forte Sports Medicine.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't know
but they're affiliated with Franciscan.
Yep. Okay, so Dr. K did all this stuff and worked on it, and then I did end up hurting my own self. But in the process, I met Mike, which was his kind of his, I call him his handler. You know what I'm saying? Like the guy that took care of him and all things. He got to do stuff with surgery, and I got to start watching surgery and doing some things. And then I'm like, I'm really interested in this. My mom worked in the hospital growing up, so she didn't work on the medical side, but she'd always ask me random names and words and figure them out. And I just kind of always liked the medical aspect of it. And I've always been a guy who I like to be around people. I like to talk. I like to serve people. I always have been since I was a little kid. And I thought, well, this gives me a chance to kind of meld those two areas together. So I started out at IU, since I'm from, right near close there. I started at Bloomington. Ended up not really liking the size and wanting to get away from it. And then I transferred to Ball State, and Dr. Widener kind of solidified that deal for me. I'd gone out there to visit and came down on a Sunday evening and just said, hey, I've got these questions. What can I know? What can I do? And he emailed me back late on a Sunday night. And of course I didn't know who he was or his, that he was blind or anything else or whatever, stuff like that. And he emails me all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's done. I'm transferring. So I went up there and transferred up there and, January. I started there in January of 2001. So,
yeah. So I mean, were you just at IU just filling out some general ed stuff? And
I really was trying to get into their program and wanted to get into it, but I didn't like the way. I mean, people from IU probably will hear this, but I didn't like the way they did it or what they did, and it wasn't the chance to get in there and actually delve in and do stuff. And that's what I really wanted, was the hands-on things. And then I thought Ball State was going to be a better fit, and that's where God kind of ended up, looking at now, that's where God let me go. And I'm really glad he did, because it's been a wonderful not just a foundation for me, but a foundation and ladders and platforms. I mean, everything just to kind of build and go where I've already going from there. So,
Right, right. So like I've asked some other students in the program, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, because it was probably a little more organized then. But do you remember who you observed with the first couple of times that you got to do some observation hours?
oh gosh. Well, I was out of football, so it was like it was, Neil and Sean and those guys would have been some of them. Probably a little bit with TC. Not as much with TC. Basketball is kind of their own.
Right,
Basketball is they're kind of their own thing. That you kind of got to
right.
get the in there or whatever.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
probably just a lot of general. Jen, Jen Harrod. I would have observed with her some, and then of course I ended up doing a lot with Teresa. Later on.
Right. Yeah.
Those are kind of and what was cool about that at the time is we as students got to go be quote unquote ATs. We got to go
Right.
do that stuff. So it was observing a lot with just the students who were ahead of me, and it was Eck and Jeremy Payne and Chris Vernon was in and out there at the very kind of early on for me, and those are kind of the guys I kind of watched and even emulated a little bit, and then kind of went from there. And so that was kind of how it all started to get kind of formed and go from there. So
Right. Yeah. Do you remember some of your classmates that when you did get in the program? First of all, do you remember like interviewing?
yeah, so I remember like kind of panicking when I got there. Like they'd all been there for a whole another semester than I had.
Right.
And so like you got to do 50 hours to apply and 100 hours to interview. And I was like, oh man, I'm never gonna do all that. And looking back at it now, it was like I think I had like almost 100 by the time I applied because I finally kind of found something it just clicked. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I'm sure other
Yeah.
people probably feel that for too or feel that way. It's like, and that's other professions have that feel that way, but it just sort of clicked. And I was like, this is awesome. And I just kind of ate it up. So I was always there and always around and always trying to learn and do things and have my hands in it and asking questions. And um but yeah, so that's the interview process. I remember being a little daunting, like it's the first time you do this big professional panel interview and
Right.
um gosh, I don't remember who all was in the interview at this time, but it would have been clinical staff and then of course the teaching staff at the time and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of the gist of it. Of course, then trying to remember all the people even in my cohort. Zach, of course, was just there at Ball State and just left. But oh geez, well, Kevin Castetter now is I think a flight nurse or flight medic up in northern Indiana.
Right.
Ethan Linder, I don't know where Ethan went. He vanished off the face of the earth. I'm sure
Yeah.
he's around somewhere. So
The last
yeah,
time I the
pretty
last
much
time I thought I heard of Ethan, he was doing something with the casino down at Rising Sun.
that's what I oh, is he back up that way
I don't
then?
know. I mean,
That's been a while ago,
yeah,
right?
it's been a
So
while. Yeah.
that sounds about like what Ethan, he would land on his feet like that every time. So
Yeah.
yeah, we had some fun times in the training room doing stuff. But yeah, it was always those types of, you know, getting with those, people we're always with. And I know some of them now I've seen, through Facebook or social media and stuff like that, or hear about every now and then. And some have gone on to be physical therapists, some of are still doing AT, and some are just off doing the other things. And
Right. Was
I know
Kara
some of
Wynn was Kara Wynn in your group?
was
That name
Kara.
ring a bell?
No, I think she was a
A little bit
year or
later.
so behind me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it runs together so much because I was there,
Oh,
kind of early. I know, yeah, for you guys especially, but I
yeah.
was there kind of like, pre-AT stuff for that semester. And then from like 01 to 0, from fall of 01 till I graduated in December of 03, there were all the classes before me and the ones after me and like my time. And then, I was there for 2 more years after that. So sometimes I got to remember like, wait, were we in undergrad together or was I
Yeah.
a grad assistant while you were a student? And like you get Kelly, Kelly Cooker, Kelly Grayson now, and
Right.
Bill Fox, and all, Kara, Kara Meyer. So all
Right.
these people like they were coming up behind me, because then you got the Steve Zooks and those guys stuff like that. They were students just right at the same time or just ahead of me. So it's like
Right.
we're all kind of right there in that big melting pot together. That it's like, wait, where were we all? Where were we all? And what are we all
Right.
doing?
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. So you talked about like some of your undergraduate clinical experiences. Obviously, football was one of them.
right.
What were some other ones that you remember doing?
It was cool. Like I got my very first, so I broke the cardinal rule my first semester as an AT student because I ended up now dating and then of course marrying a softball player, and that was the first sport I worked. So
Yeah,
Crystal,
yeah,
I'm sure may listen to this later on, and that's always the joke that even when I teach here, we do the pre year meeting. I'm always the one who has to give the quick fun spiel about if you're going to date athletes, just be professional about it and don't be stupid and stuff like that or whatever. So anyway, so I did softball, I did gymnastics, which was a really kind of cool rotation. That was neat to, and I know you're a gymnastics guy, so
yeah.
neat to learn all those, just different, right? And the way the
Right.
body
Yeah.
works and the way the body moves. And I've always been kind of fascinated with that. So gymnastics was a cool
And
rotation.
you don't ever get gymnastics completely better. You just maintain them.
You just
Yeah.
maintain them, right? And that's
Yeah.
how and actually that's a great way for me to look at I'm sure probably gonna talk about later on with like the areas I work in now. You just
Yeah.
maintain them. So
Yeah.
and you hope for the best until they get a chance where they have to rest, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that gymnastics. I worked oh geez. I worked football almost every fall and never
Right.
failed. That I worked women's track and field. I worked track and field period across country and track and field. I worked women's, and then of course I did that in grad school too. And then I can't remember all the things.
Did you go off site at all?
Yeah, I did go outside. I did go to the PT. I tell a story all the time, and I don't remember the PT's name, and I probably because I chose not to. And my first PT thing, the guy gave me no warning. It was kind of not nice about it, and he's like, "Go get that whirlpool ready." I'm like, "Okay, fine." He's like, "We're gonna like look at a wound." I'm like, "Okay, fine, whatever." And he had me open the wound up, and of course, no one on this podcast is going to be grossed out by this, but I opened the wound up. He gave me no warning at all. I opened up and like maggots and stuff fall out of this guy's leg. And I'm like, dude, you didn't give me any warning at all. Like
Yeah.
that was my quote unquote rehab rotation I had to do. And it only lasted about 8 weeks, which was great. But I did do
Yeah.
a high school rotation at Henry County Sports Medicine. So I got to meet, Rob Craig and ended up, of course, then with Tony down there later on doing some stuff
Right.
with them and things like that. So yeah, so that was kind of the most of my stuff which was the beauty of being at a bigger institution like Ball State is, most things were on campus or campus sports. But then I did go off to high school and stuff like that. So
Excuse me. Yeah. I know it's inevitable. I do a podcast and I'm coughing. So there you go. Um,
that was all the undergrad clinical stuff. So
yeah, yeah. So then you kind of you're in this area that you're finishing up your undergrad, um, and again you kind of broke a rule too, but
yeah,
I shouldn't say rule, but more of a precedent because a lot of times, when everybody Ball State's undergrad experience, in my opinion, was a really good one, and then they would have these GA positions open, and you're like, oh yeah, I
right,
want to keep this thing going, and
right,
inevitably Neil or Tony or Rex or Jen or somebody would say, you know what, you need to go out and spread your wings,
right.
and
Which was my plan when I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
getting
So
done.
kind of let's talk about that. You end up back at Ball State,
So yeah, well, actually, one of my last rotations, I guess I should have thought about that. My last rotation was with CIO, but it was in Anderson with Dr. Jones and all a bunch of them, which is kind. But I still ended up coming and helping with football a lot that fall too. So yeah, when I graduated in December of '03, Crystal still had another year or so left to play softball. So I was working for CIO and there in Anderson. I did come to up to Muncie a couple times, but really I just stayed down there in Anderson. So it kept me in the game. That was when all the market kind of got flooded. The testing market got flooded that's when all the interns got to flood it. So
right?
or internship routes got to flood it. So I had to take my test in stages instead of all at once and all over the place. Like I had to drive to almost Fargo,
Oh my
North
goodness,
Dakota. Like I had to go to Minnesota Moorhead to take my written sim, and I had to wait for like till that was in like November. I had to wait till February or whatever to take my practical, which was University of Kentucky. So I just literally drove down. I called my dad at like 8:07 and he was like, "What are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be taking your test?" I was like, "I'm done." And he was like, "What do you mean you're done?" And I was like, "I'm done." And I was like, "I did my 7 or 8 things
right?
and
Got out.
I was out." And he's like, "Where you at?" I was like, "I'm already out of Lexington headed towards Cincinnati. I'm headed back to Muncie." But anyway, but yeah, so they called and so I was working for CIO trying to figure out what I was going to do and they're like it was so funny. I'll remember Neil calling me. He's like, "Jonathan, what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm working. I got work today." And he's like, "Well, when you're done, spring football's got practice. We come. I want to talk about something at the field house. I'm like, or there at the turf or whatever. I can't
Yeah,
remember what we
yeah,
call it. Field
yeah.
sports building.
Field sports
And
building.
I was like, yeah, sure, cool. I'll come up there. And so I got there around 4 or 5 o'clock, and I'm sitting there, and that's when I told you the story about Hoke walks in and punches me in the back, basically, and asks what I'm doing here and why I'm allowed to still be here. And I had a few choice fun words, but anyway,
Right.
um, I was like,
Typical Brady. Yeah.
typical Brady, yeah. So which was awesome. He was great to work with. Anyway, they're like, listen, we know Crystal still got another year. We know you're probably not really going anywhere yet. Um, we're going from 3 to 7 GAs, and we're losing all three of ours. Like two are done and one is opting to just not finish.
Right.
We need someone who understands our program, our people, kind of a liaison. Would you be willing to come do that? And I was like, yes. I was like, because I
Right.
knew it was going to keep me in the game. That's what I wanted. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, we want you to kind of come help and not really be like, but kind of be a leader in it. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. They said, but here's the only catch. And I was like, what's the catch? And they're like, we really want you to cover women's track and field and cross country. And I was like, well, and they were like, come on, we know, and I Coach Parks and I got along great.
Right.
We're like, we know Coach Parks and but would you come work with it? I was like, yeah, let's do that, which was awesome. So I went and started right in the fall with our cross country team. We got to go to pre-nationals and nationals both years or that year, and which was super cool experience. And we won indoor MAC that year and did really well at the outdoor MAC and got to start really traveling everywhere. So that was fun. So
Yeah.
I did that. And then my second year of grad school, that's when Teresa left and Crystal graduated. We got married,
Right.
and Crystal graduated. We got married, and so Terry, the coach at the time, and Teresa told Neil and those guys like, you got to put Johnathan over there with softball now that since Crystal's technically gone. And so my second year, I switched over to softball, which I love. I'm a baseball softball junkie. So
Right.
um, for me, that was just perfect. So I switched over to softball and got to travel all over with them, and that was pretty neat. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your graduate assistantship was really unusual, but I think that you made the best out of the situation. And you were around at a very tumultuous time. I mean, you're there
right,
from 2004 to 2006, and 2006 at the end of December that year, Tony leaves,
right.
and
Yeah, he left right after I left in May. I mean, I left in May when I was done with
right,
school, and he left not long after, which shocked me. Like we were all like, "Wait, what?" And then of course I knew all the
right.
turmoil that was going on, but
Yeah,
still,
it was a big switch, and again, when I talked to Neil and his podcast, we kind of broke those up
right.
to that
Kind of those
that
eras down, right,
yeah,
right,
exactly. But I think that's the thing, and is that that there was a lot of things changing in
right.
the process of the dynamic of the program at that point in time too, and so you're leaving at that time. So you're done with your GA, you're married, and you're thinking about what? What are you thinking
I
about?
well, Sean and Neil and those guys were kind of I feel like they were grooming me, which they were kind of grooming me to go off and probably go into probably one of the MAC schools or some of the schools around that area. I wasn't planning on leaving Indiana or like I mean not really, what I'm saying, like not going
Right.
far. And the deal was we kind of thought, Crystal had gone my second year of grad school, Crystal had come back and been a GA for the sports management program, and she taught with Gina and them or whatever, and that was great and did all of her, she's the super smart one and did all her thesis and stuff like that in a year. So we kind of thought, well, I'll go off and go work at a college somewhere, and then she'll just go with me and then go be a doctoral assistant or get her PhD or work or teach or something like that. But then, she's from small town Indiana like I am. So she's originally from Connersville, Indiana, and then she was living in Cambridge City when she and I met right there on the interstate and, near where you are now, of course.
Yeah.
And um, so it was crazy. Like I just, for whatever reason, I saw this job pop up, and like, I guess that had been like Christmas of '05. And yeah, Christmas '05. And then I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Like, let's just see about this in Connersville. They emailed me that night, like, can you come tomorrow? And I was like, I had no, thankfully I had a pair of dress slacks and a dress shirt, and I borrowed a
Yeah.
tie from my father-in-law, and I went down there the next day and kind of impromptu interviewed, and they were just telling me about what they want to do at Connersville's a 4A school or 3-day 4A school. And I don't know how
4 a.m.
many
Yeah.
are now.
Yeah.
When I was there were 4A, and
Yeah.
um, got to go down there, and they're like, listen, we've never like really had a true hired AT before. We've had people do it, and or we have the hospital had never had an AT before. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, will you come down here and kind of do this and build it? And will you cover the high school? And I was like, well, maybe. And so I took they gave me the job offer like a couple days later before Christmas break was even over. And I went back to Neil and Sean. I never forget Sean looked at me and said, "You're dumb if you don't take this job." And I was like, "Well,
Yeah.
I don't know." And blah, blah. He's like, Jonathan, it's more money. It's more money for CEUs. They're paying your phone. He says, it's a good high school. He said, you get to go build something. Like it's not, you're gonna make,
Right.
making I was like, he said anywhere from 5 to 9 thousand more dollars than you're going to work at the college setting. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, like he's
Right.
like a
Yeah.
little hoops to jump through, and so I took that, and we moved down to Cambridge, back to Cambridge City. We were never planning ever to live near near our families or parents. Not that we didn't want to, it's just that wasn't the plan. And then
Right.
ended up taking over at Connersville High School in May of 2006, where I graduated in May. Well, I didn't graduate. I was in Buffalo, New York with the last games of softball. I had two ER trips that
Oh my
last
goodness.
stint ever. Yeah, for broken bones and stuff like that or whatever. We had
You
one
went
in
out with a
Buffalo.
bang.
Yeah, I had one in Buffalo and one in Kent. So I was in Buffalo and Kent during graduation. So, but 2 weeks later, I already accepted the job and I started at Connersville at Fayette. It was Fayette Memorial at the time. They changed their name to Fayette Regional. They now are no longer in existence. Reed kind of ended up getting
Oh
them.
yeah, Reed came in and absorbed them,
Yeah, so
which is interesting because because you were part of that wellness facility down there too through the hospital, correct?
but I did some stuff. I kind of ended up overseeing a little bit of the wellness of helping out with it. At least I'm gonna have some new
Right.
ideas, and so that was kind of cool and fun as a different approach. Like I got to kind of go in and out of there, and then, but yeah, I did the high school thing for almost 4 years, and then last year I did the high school. Is that right? Yeah, last year I did the high school. I actually did the high school and was the director of all rehab
Yeah.
because
So
I ended up taking that job. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
no, so what's down there now is Reed took that over and
Right.
um I think Reed has an athletic training clinic down in Connersville too. They have an athlete trainer there because
Yeah.
originally when I was going through my process of uh uh breaking out of the college scene, I
Yeah.
interviewed I interviewed with Reed and that was one of the things I was interested in was that clinic and then covering Connersville High School. And
Right.
ironically, my wife's from Connersville,
I don't know if Sydney was from there.
yeah, my wife's
Maybe
with
maybe she did tell me that years ago when she and
yeah,
we
she's a
talked about
Spartan.
this.
Yeah, Spartan pride. Yeah, that's
Uh, and and that was such a neat experience, like I'd heard of Connersville growing up, it was a lot like Bedford. I'm from Bedford, Indiana. It was a lot like
yeah,
Bedford.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They had the Ford plants and they had all the industrial. Of course, now it's unfortunately sad the way it is now, but they had all that stuff, and you go to the Spartan Bowl and all the atmosphere.
Yeah,
My first year there was Matt Howard's senior year, so that was kind of a cool claim to fame. I got to work with Matt and be
yeah.
his AT, and then it was kind of fun. He told me he took stuff over to Ryan and then those guys at Butler, like, oh, my AT I had at Connersville, he did this with my blisters and took care of it. And they're like, well, where'd you learn that from? He's like, his name's Jonathan. He's like, oh, we know who that is. So like,
Yeah.
whatever you need to do, we'll help you fix that out. So it's kind of fun to to work
Yeah.
with work with him, and he was just a good kid. And the people there were awesome. Pam Noble was the AD there, and she knew Crystal from when and my in-laws really well, and so it was kind of a neat environment to get in there and really cut my teeth by myself, and work and build something. And that's what we did. We built up to two. We were going on after more schools when I ended up deciding it was time to leave. And so, yeah, we had
Yeah.
that. We had Cartersville and Franklin County at the time. So,
No, I mean, and I think that's the thing is that there's not enough um appreciation for the opportunity to build something. I think
right,
that's the thing is that um I think there's a lot of people just think, oh, I'll take this job and I'll do this for a while and until I'm ready to go do something else and to be able to build something, to be able to take something and and grow it and build it and then maybe extend it out a little bit further,
right,
especially in athlete training because the groundwork that you laid there in Connersville is has set up the people that are there now and even Franklin County, which has a Ball State alum athletic trainer working with them and
oh, really?
yeah.
Awesome.
Um, that they probably that some of those people still remember you or whoever was in
Right,
Franklin County to do that. And so you set the table for the athlete trainers that are there now and the expectations of what, if you're really the first one that kind of served them, to set the table of what the expectations are. And I don't think that people put enough stock into that, in the aspect of where you are at. You may be the first opportunity for somebody to have a contact with an athlete trainer and the services that we provide.
Right.
And so it's very important that you put that best foot forward in order to, it's not about just you, it's about what you leave behind. And I probably should be talking to your students about, we should have had this discussion about that with your students last week,
Yeah.
but I think that's the thing. And I don't think you give yourself enough credit for that, because you're not looking at that, you're always looking forward, you're not necessarily
Right.
spending time looking behind. So
But
you,
I appreciate that, because I never thought about that, like leaving that, leaving, like we talked about legacy, right? Leaving a legacy. And I really hadn't thought too much, but I did talk to someone a while back, and they kind of brought that up. Like, well, Brent Duncan, he's not the AD there anymore either. And he was like, "Oh man, I miss being around." I was like, he's like, "It's changed a lot since you were here, and you done a lot and built a lot of things up, but it's changed since you were here." I was like, "It's great. It's awesome. I love all the things that they've improved and built." And it's kind of fun to see those students sometimes even on Facebook, and they were talking about the first game of the year for basketball is always against Union City on the night before Thanksgiving. And I was like, oh, we're reminiscing nostalgia about that. Like,
yeah,
who was the better Spartan when I was there, and who was this, that, and the other. And like, oh, Jonathan, we loved it when you were there, and you were right there in with us the whole time, and you never failed to be there, and you did all these things. And that's how I kind of took that. I was like, I felt like this is my chance to create something for these people. And it's not this, it wasn't creating it for the hospital, it wasn't creating it for the athletes, it was creating it for the whole community.
right,
And that's how I looked at it. Like I wanted people to, like, I wanted kids to wear any shirts we gave them that had Fayette Regional Health System on it, and the Connersville Sports, sponsors or whatever. I wanted them to wear that because I wanted people to see it. I wanted people to see me wearing those logos and those things, stuff like that, out in the public, because then they knew that no, the Jonathan works for Fayette, and then, or hey, since Jonathan works for Fayette, we should go see this doctor and get Dr. McDonald and get worked on, or we should go to we're okay to go to the ER here. And that was a big change
yeah.
in that time there too, because there was a lot of people that weren't very happy with the hospital. Like, it didn't have a good track record. They used to call it Fatal Memorial instead of Fayette Memorial. And so we did a lot to change that. And that was the thing too. And we did it, then we expanded to Franklin County. Like, they called us and like, we want what you guys have up there. I never thought about it like that. Like, we want you
Yeah.
guys up there. And then I was looking to expand to some other places, before I left, but I also was loyal to my people. I knew that, the people from Ball State and specifically TC and those guys. And, I lived in Cambridge City. Those kids came to my house all the time and needed stuff, and I would
I
look at
know,
them.
when we
And then
were,
but I never wanted to step on their toes because, it was loyalty, right? Even though it
right.
was,
Yeah. No, I was laughing because that's where their volleyball sectionals were this year, was at Cambridge City, and I was trying to
oh,
figure out
really?
which house was yours, right across the street from the gym, because that's what
Dude,
you
it
told
was.
me.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. So I should have told you, like, when I was never there on Friday nights, I was always golfing away on Friday nights, right? But
Yeah.
then I started not working high school sports, that we would kind of just, I mean, literally, I could probably stand in my backyard. I could hit a ball for sure into the middle of the football field from my backyard. Like, it was
Yeah.
like over the alley, and that the dentist office right there across, and then I was right behind the dentist office basically. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I mean,
it was right
it's
there.
very tight. Cambridge City is very tightly packed.
It is. It's pretty tight. It's
It's
almost
very
like,
tightly packed. Yeah, I was like, football wise, that field is like, there
oh, the
was no
field
room.
especially is tightly packed. Yeah, there's not a
Yeah.
lot of room. So people park on the streets and watch. So it's kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so you're at Connersville, you're rocking and rolling and doing great stuff for the hospital. So when does this deal with Union come about?
so that would have been, I took over like I said, I took over the rehab director position in like end of 2010, and then thought, oh, this would be, I tell students all the time, it was the worst professional decision I ever made. And people are like, why? I was like, well, I got a $15,000 raise and I had to get an office. People were like, well, why is that so bad? I was like, because that means I had to have an office and I had to be there more than I wanted to be there. Because
Right.
it's like, like I had this autonomy forever, to do my thing. And I was still doing that. But then other people in leadership got kind of bumped around and moved around after I took over that position. And then literally was a friend of a friend situation, got put in leadership positions over people that they weren't necessarily going to be initially. And then it started being, thumb on top of you, all the things,
Right.
and not understanding the side of, like, we're outpatient. Athletic training is all outpatient. My rehab was pretty much all outpatient. I had to go out to the community and get doctors and people and stuff like that. And they didn't understand from the inpatient mindset of why are you not here? And anyway, so I was just trying to think of something. Crystal's finally like, listen, something's got to give. Either let's go back in the clinical setting or let's do something for your sake and your mental health. And we didn't talk about mental health as much at the time, but back at that time it was like, for you're going nuts and you're kind of driving us nuts, and like let's look at this. And then I just happened to be going to NTA that day, and I saw this job opening down here at Union University, and I didn't even know where Jackson, Tennessee was. I knew Johnny Cash sang a song about Jackson, but I thought it was Jackson,
Yeah.
Mississippi, and then of course it's about here in Jackson, Tennessee, and West Tennessee. I was like, oh, Tennessee is great, but of course it's the West Side. So
West
everyone,
Side, yeah.
you live in Tennessee. I was like, not the mountain pretty side. I was like, it's beautiful here. It's all, but it's like being in Indiana. It's all farmland. It's like being at home.
Yeah.
It's like farmland. So it's no big deal. And anyway, so I applied and got a phone. It was so funny when I applied. I remember when I applied that it would have been like my interview in June. So it had been like late May, early June, somewhere around there. Um, I applied. But my first phone call that I got about it was from Ben Fox, who of course is a Ball State
Yeah.
alum and
Yeah.
was an undergrad student when I was a grad student, because Ben happened to have been the athletic trainer at Lambeth University here in Jackson for a few years before it closed, before he went to SEMO. And when the guy saw I was from Ball State, he called Ben and said, "Hey, do you know this guy Johnathan?" And he's like, "Yes, I do know Jonathan." He's like, "What do you think?" He's like, "He's a great, and I hate to say the way Ben said, it sounds bad coming from me, but Ben's like, he's great. He's awesome. You really should hire him. You need to get him down here. He'd be great for your students, stuff like that. So Ben calls me and is like, hey, you're gonna get a phone call from a guy at university. And I was like, well, how do you know that, Ben? And he was like, he just called me. I was like, why did he call you, Ben? And then he was like, well, this is, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I ended up having a referral and a reference. It goes back to that conversation we had with my students last week from you
Yeah.
and Neil. It's like we had those connections and network made, and there was a network out there I didn't even know. Like, or that was another connection I didn't even know of. And so I got a call and came in and interviewed in June of 12 and took the job and started in August of 2012. So I've been here ever since. So came
Yeah.
down here as a third professor and the men's basketball athletic trainer. It was kind of I got a release to do the basketball. So
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool that you could still keep your hand in the clinical aspect of things
right.
and
And
still
I
teach.
have the whole time since I've never stopped really being in the clinical aspect. The only time I ever quote unquote would have stopped was when I was just the rehab director for a couple years there. But I still helped kids all the time. I was still at basketball games and football games and doing stuff. And
Yeah.
people are always Crystal used to joke that when we lived in Cambridge there by the school, there would be car I didn't realize it for a while, but there would be cars outside sitting out in the front on the street. And when the kids would all go to bed, I'd flip the light on, and that's when they knew the clinic was open. And they would come in and I would come in and take care of kids and people we knew or family friends, stuff like that. And then, but then I would always, send them off to their ATs, or if they didn't have
Right.
ATs,
Yeah.
take care of them and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah,
Well,
so I came out in 2012, and then I've been down here. This is my almost the end of my 12th year.
yeah.
This will be the end of my 12th year in May, and I've been the clinical coordinator, and then clinical coordinator and professor strictly, no clinical duties here at the university for the last 9 years.
Yeah.
I did that. I did the first 3 years. I did basketball and the teaching, and then we had people leave and move, so I just bumped up, and then yeah. So
Yeah. So faculty wise, how many people do you have right now at
and now
university?
two.
Yeah.
So
Two.
we had three until December, and then Jen Shumway was a friend of mine that was here, a colleague. She went back to the University of Florida to go do a really cool research, which is right up her alley, a really cool research position. So um, and just one of those things where God works those things out. Like people
Yeah.
people go where they need to go, where they need to go, whether they think about it. And there's been some cool stuff happen for her since she's gone down there. It was a situation she didn't realize for her kids that ended up being perfect, that she got to where she was. So,
Right.
but yeah, myself, and then it's kind of neat because my other colleague is a former student of ours. So
Yeah.
she's ATPT, and she came back. She's wonderful, and her husband is a former student of ours too, and he's a little older, a couple years older, and he was our strength and conditioning coach here. And then they actually just had their second baby last night. So she's on maternity leave, and it's just Jonathan until May 4th, I
May
guess, or
4th.
whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, you stop, you're still teaching, and then in 2013, you come up with this brilliant idea of Pillar Sports Medicine, is that it?
So yeah, that
Pillar.
came about in about 15.
Did I?
But in 2013, there's a PT clinic here that was just starting up that was smaller that asked me to come and do. Um, they said, hey, we're kind of starting off in the sports medicine world. We're at this little bitty country school. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I can understand little bitty country schools. And we want an athletic trainer to cover football games and kind of just be around. And I was like, and of course, they'd never had anything before too. So I looked at the situation. I was like, wait, this is another chance to build something, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So I took it and did it. It was just extra money for my family on Friday, so it was like 10, 12 weeks or whatever it was a year, working football on Friday nights. And then that is built to the point where I finally was like, listen, I need to start my own thing because I'd started doing some other stuff along the way and covered from other things and trying to look into more things to do. And I just did football for the longest time for them up until about 2018, 19. And then, but I do other things here and there, give or take. Um, so then but in 15, 16, I came up with the idea of Pillar Active Medicine is the name. Pillar Active
Yeah,
Medicine
that's right. That's what I.
LLC. Yeah. So Pillar Active Medicine is what my company is. And I like the idea of, so pillar is because it's my three pillars basically. So my faith, my family, and my desire to serve my community, or my calling to serve my community is kind of my three pillars it's built off of. And then I chose active medicine because it's not just sports, right? Like people wouldn't think some of the things I do, which I'm sure you may bring up here in a little bit, are not your traditional sports that people are activities that people wouldn't think about. And so I like the idea of active medicine. And people are starting to go from that, so there's always that debate of athletic training or sports medicine, like which one sounds better. So I was like, well, let's do the active medicine. And so yeah, I did that. And so that became official about 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. And then official. I would always start doing that, but then I filed for all that a while ago. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
yeah, so I started doing that. So I've been covering football at the high school I do stuff with since 2013. It was actually cool. I helped them just apply for the Innovate grant, like the
Okay.
Corey
Yes.
Institute grant, because they were like, we don't want you to just be here on Fridays and cover basketball home games. Like, what would it take to get you, like, the contract's running out with the PT company? Like,
Right.
can we hire you? And like, but we want you. We still have to can afford it because we know you're worth a lot more than what we can afford, and which I appreciated. And they're like, but let's see if we can get this grant. So I helped them write that grant the other day, and so we'll see. So hoping and praying that maybe we get that, and then I'll go work for them a lot too. So
Yeah.
or I'll hire people to work for me to
Right.
work
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. So the times I can't cover, then I'll get other people to come. That's the beauty of being an athletic or academic program is, I get these students certified and they love to moonlight and freelance and pick up some extra money here and there.
Right. Yeah.
Or I
Absolutely.
could, if I can, I'll hire them full time, but I'm not there yet. So
Yeah. So what leads you so what came first? Rodeo, motocross, color guard? Kind of explain those.
they've all come in the last few years, kind of sort of simultaneously. So
Oh
I
my
have
goodness, the word of mouth gets out. Those are three unusual things
Well,
that
but no, it's none of them. None of them are related through well, there's word of mouth since I've gotten the initials of each one of those, but none of
yeah,
them. So I grew up in a bike shop. My dad owned a bike shop when I was like little bitty. So I
yeah,
grew up on bicycles and around those kids and doing those things. So I've always been kind of infatuated with that stuff. Like,
right,
Rad was
yeah,
my
yeah,
favorite movie growing up and all those things. Like, so never had a dirt bike, like a motocross bike, but always loved it. And just what it is and loud and crazy. And anyway, so in 2019, so let's step back. So this will be the 43rd year. So Loretta Lynn's Ranch is in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, which is only about an hour east of here. They host the AMA, American Motorcycle Association Amateur Motocross Nationals every year. They have for like the last 40 some years. They sent out a thing on Facebook and through TATS, so the Tennessee Athletic Trainer Society, like, hey, we're needing certified athletic trainers that are licensed in Tennessee for this kind of extreme sport event in the first week of August in Central Tennessee. And I was like, there's only one event that would need that. I was like, no way. And I was like, it's like a bucket list. So I was like, no way. So I told Crystal, and she's like, do it. I was like, what's our anniversary? She's like, go do it. Yeah, she goes, I knew I shouldn't have married an athletic trainer in August. It was my fault. I understand that. I know. She goes, go do it. So I messaged them, and they're like, how long have you been certified? And I was like, I don't know, like 18 years, something like that, 17, 18 years. They're like, well, we don't pay a whole lot. Da, da, da. I said, well, what are you paying? And they're like, they told me, and I was like, oh, I'll do it for that. And they're like, okay. And they're like, well, can you come like the last 3 days, like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday? I was like, is that like the big days? And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. They're like, do you want to come? And I was like, yes, I do. So I just drove over every day. And that was the first year. And then that was in 19. And then in 20, all the COVID stuff happened.
Right.
And we still had the event, and I did it with the company that did there too, but they opted not to come at all, but they sent me. So as the sports medicine guy, which really was a cool godsend moment, opened the door for me because I went and did it, had a great time. And I got some cool pictures with kids and stuff like that or whatever that we did and did all these things. And the next year in 21, they're like, Johnathan, you have a company, right? I was like, yeah. Like, we don't want to use the other company. Can we hire you directly? And I was like, yes, you
Yeah, you
can.
can't.
So that would have been 21. Is that right? Yeah, this would be well, is that right? So 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, no, sorry, 20 was the first year I did it. Sorry. The year COVID year. And then 21, so 2021 I worked for the other company, and then 22, 23, and now 24 have all been with my company that paid for. So this will be my fifth year. I already got the verbal and already had the contract signed for the last week of July, first week of August this year. So it's just for people who don't know, and if anyone hears this podcast and wants to come hang out, maybe get a little in the action that, through the network, let me know. But it's just nonstop chaos and carnage and crazy for like 6, 7 days. It's crazy, man. It's like 3,000 participants or like,
Oh my
some of those are
goodness.
alternates, but about 20 to 30,000, like spectators and stuff. It's just non-stop, and it's super cool and super fun and loud and intense. And I realize now as I've gotten older and I've got kids of my own, and my older daughter, my wife and I both pretty sure, oh, you probably got some ADD going on, ADHD going on. There's no ADD anymore. It's ADHD now. And my wife, as soon as we kind of got that, like, okay, she looked at me and she goes, it all makes sense now. When she looked at me, she's like, it makes so much sense. And so I'm one of those weird ones that it all goes pretty calm when I go into chaos, and I like it. And so that happened and then in what was it, January of 20, is this 24? This would have been in January of, yeah, 22. There's a pro bull rider down here, PBR guy, that put on an event, and I was like, well, this would be kind of fun to go do this. Well, again, it ended up being kind of a word of mouth, sort of, but through a friend of a friend. And I saw the guy who's the radio guy for West Carroll football, basketball, where I do football stuff. He and his son were gonna go to this event. Well, they'd gone to it last year. I was like, hey, do you know the people who run that? He's like, yeah, hold on. And then I got a text message from this lady. She says, you're gonna get a call in 3 minutes from my husband. It's the main guy. You're gonna get a phone call from him. You should answer it. I'm like, okay, cool. So I answered. He's like, well, we kind of trade time off and sponsorships and all these things. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I know the spiel. I know how this works, right? He's like, well, would you come? I was like, listen, I'll come on Friday and just kind of be there. So yeah, I come get the guys ready and kind of be around in case they need something, get them ready. So it's more the injury prevention side of things, and that's
Right.
not what I was looking for, but I thought that's my foot in the door. I'll do it. So I go there and set up and thought, okay, this would be kind of cool. And I was like, okay, God, this is pretty neat. Like, I've never really been around rodeo before, other than seeing it out at Laramie, Wyoming, when we were doing our big RV trip in 21. And,
Yeah.
uh, I knew it, of course, obviously, but I've never really been around it. And uh, so I was like, God, this is neat. If you want this to happen, you'll kind of make this. If you want to make this happen for me, I'm interested. And so the first guy to shoot goes up and comes down sideways with still attached to the bull. Bull and he both like land straight broadside. I
Oh,
watch his shoulder dislocate, and I'm thinking, I dislocated his shoulder. That sucks. I'm
yeah.
watching. But then like the medic and EMS person there, they're just like sitting there on their phones and stuff and not really paying attention. And then they were like, but they saw what it was, like, well, oh well. And they're like, they weren't going to do anything about it. And I was like, hold on. So I just hopped over the little railing there. He's like, hey man, let me see your shoulder. He's like, what are you? I said, well, I'm the athletic trainer guy that's here. Let me see it. So I relocated his shoulder really quick because it'd done so much. It was just
Right.
easy. So it made me look great that I put his shoulder in so fast. And these other guys were like, wow, Cody, we didn't know you were going to have this guy here who could do all these things. And blah, blah. He says, well, I didn't know he could do that either. And I was like,
Yep.
because you had been asking, I hadn't gotten a chance to show you yet, right?
Right.
And it was that building thing again. Now that I think about it, you've got this in my head now, this building thing. So I walked back over and the guy's like, well, that's pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. And it was funny. I got into it with the medic. She's like, you can't do that. I was like, yes, I can. That's within my scope of practice to do. And she's like, no, you can't. I was like, I can. And she's like, well, I'm going to report you. I was like, go ahead. I was like, my supervising physician will say, shush it. He knows what he's doing. Let him. She's like, well, you can't. I was like, so I pulled up the practice. Like, I'm allowed to do this. She's like, well, I didn't know you could do that. So I kind of said, okay, God, this is really neat. This was really
Yeah.
cool. Real quick. I love again, it's chaos and carnage, right? I love being around this, like loud and chaos and crazy. Um, okay, God, if you want this to happen, like, you'll show me a way to do this or you'll make it happen, whatever. And I kid you not, Troy, and I know you understand this too, but I just finished kind of saying that quick prayer. And as I'm sitting there watching, the bullfighters go and their guys ride. And this guy taps me on the shoulder and said, my name is Doug. I own the Slide and Ride Rodeo in Jackson, Tennessee. What are you doing after this event tonight? And I was like, well, I was going home. Why? And he's like, would you want to, we're gonna do bull riding tonight. Would you want to come and be my medical guy for it? And I was like, yeah, let me call my wife real quick. He's like, I'll pay you cash, whatever you want. And I was like, okay. So I called Crystal. I called Crystal. She's like, go. I told her, kind of explain why I said that. She's like, oh, you have to go. So I was like, I went and did it. And I've been there almost every Friday, Saturday night at the bar here in Jackson at Slide and Ride Rodeo. Everyone wants to look it up. That's my shameless plug for it. Slide and Ride Rodeo on Facebook and social media. It's everyone thinks, oh, it's mechanical bull. Nope, it's live indoor bull riding.
Yeah.
We ride her like 11 and 12 o'clock for sure, but 10, 11, and 12 almost every Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah.
And we've
I,
got
I've
PBR.
been to a bar like that myself in San Antonio. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And that's really the only other one is like there's
Yeah.
one down there like San Antonio, that area, and we're actually building another. We're building a big one in Nashville, so I'm pretty excited about that. And what's cool about that is he's like, listen, I'm only taking my best people, and you're the top of my list. I want you to come with me to Nashville. And I was like, for real? He's like, we're going to talk about some numbers, but we really want to work. He said, whatever it's going to take for me to get you there. He said, you can put whoever you want here in Jackson. I don't care. I need you with me in Nashville. I was like, okay. So it's just, again, that word of mouth. And I've gotten to do other rodeos and bull riding things since then. I had an in this past weekend to go down to the PBR in Memphis, but my basketball team won. So they were still in the playoffs. So I
Yeah.
couldn't give up my commitment there. Um, I felt horrible about that if I'd done that. So
I mean, are rodeo injuries very comparable to football and like wrestling field
yeah,
or
so
wrestling,
I
hockey, collision, any
right.
type of
It's all
collision
those
sport? Yeah.
high impact collision sports, right? So, man, I've had some of the best stories from rodeo. My students love it because that's one of the reasons I still want to work clinically is because I still have stories to tell them, my students, which is fun. Anyway, yeah, I tell people all the time, a broken arm is a broken arm. It just depends on how you get it, right?
Yeah.
So it can be, you're tripping on get a foosh, trip and fall and break it, snap your wrist, or you're playing football and you take a helmet to the arm or fall, or I joke you can be on a dirt bike, flying 100 feet, you're 50 feet in the air, flying 100 feet, and you land, and the dirt bike doesn't like you anymore, so it just decides to throw you and ragdoll you 50 yards down the turf, and
Yeah.
you break your arm, or you're a bull rider, and you come down and bull steps on you. It just depends. So, yeah, it's a lot of high collision sports, obviously. So they all have to wear chest protectors. Not all of them wear helmets, which I wish they would, but it is, even then, it's the impact is so great. But for the most part, they kind of know what they're doing. So they get thrown from the bull, or they hop off and get away. And I tell you what, the bull riders are crazy, but it's the bullfighters are amazing. Those protection bullfighters, those guys are unreal. Like, talk about, I mean, they'll slide in a pocket between the rider and the bull and just grab that bull but literally grab the bull by the horns and direct and turn that thing away and
Yeah.
take a hit themselves. And it's crazy. Like, I know a bunch of pro guys now that I've worked with and done some things with, so I follow them and we keep in touch. And then I got the guys who do the UBF, the ultimate bullfighting, which is the one who actually fight the Mexican fighting bulls. Those
Yeah.
bulls are mean. And so they're not
Yeah.
like the big bucking bulls, but they'll come after you and keep coming after you and hook you and stuff like that. So
Yeah. That's amazing. That
it's
so
awesome.
so
It's
let
so
me ask you
crazy.
this.
So,
What kind of I know we're getting short on time here,
oh no, I still
but
got time. Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
but what kind of so we talk about the influence of athletic training and what you're doing out there for the patients. What
Right.
kind of relationship do you have with your orthopedic surgeons in the area? Because they have to know that you're doing all this crazy stuff.
Right, right. Well, they do and they don't, like, because a lot of my riders are from the area, and so a lot of them don't want to get referred on anyway, and like they won't. But my ortho is I've built a really good relationship at Union as I did it, and then when I started to work football, I built the relationship even bigger, and now I've done these other things with it. So yeah, Crystal knows that there's like 3 or 4 numbers on my phone that if I can't call, like if I'm hurt and I can't call for myself, she knows which the 3 or 4 ortho surgeons to call from my behalf. And they're the ones, but they're also the ones who've done the things for my kids, like my kids, and
Yeah.
it's yeah. So I've built a pretty good relationship with them, and it's kind of fun now to watch my students and other people that are former students of mine that have found out I've gotten into this stuff, and they're like, wait a second. How do we get involved in this? What do we do? Matter of fact, I'm going to be gone. Like I told you, I'm going to conferences this weekend, and excuse me, I'll miss Friday, but be back on Saturday. So Friday night, one of my former students is working. He's like, anytime you need me to work this, I will work it. Because
Yeah.
he's covered for me a couple other times. He's like, it's unreal. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
so
and
it's
and then
been a
and
good way to
then
build those relationships.
and those in the same context, those relationships now do most of the emergency services people in your community know who you are and what you're doing as well?
Some do. Yeah, I've only, knock on wood, I've only had to call EMS twice, 3 times. Is that right? Yeah, 3 times there. Once was just because as a patron at the bar was ended up having a heart attack. It was funny on that one. Like the nurse was like, "Oh, I think it's his blood sugar, all these things." About I was like, "He's having a heart attack." Like, well, how do you know? I was like, "Because watch this." And I checked his vitals. I was like, "You tell me what that means." She's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "He's having a heart attack." And so
Yeah.
I was like, "She's like, what are you going to do?" So we dealt with all of him, and then I had a guy get stepped on, and this guy is a former pro level rider, and he was in his he's like 51 or 52, super like strong and
Right.
core tight, all those things. And I finally looked at him. I was like, "Do you need to go to the hospital?" He said, "Yes." So I'm like, if I've got a guy like that telling me I gotta go to the hospital, like
Right.
it's time to go. So we called about that one, and that was kind of cool because the guy who showed up, the medic who showed up, was a guy I just done a class with. I was a guest speaker. I was like, "Oh, you're Jonathan." I was like, "I am." Like, nice to meet
Yeah.
you. And then it's happened that way a couple times. And the last guy has that one. He had how do I want to say this? He had a very unfortunate male injury.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
he got the bull came right on top of him and
Oh,
had a
yeah.
laceration just above his
Yeah.
just above his stuff and on in his scrotum and stuff like that. So he's like, I can't move. I was like, so we got up and got him out. I was like, you can, someone can take you to the hospital. You have to go to an ambulance. He's like, no, call an ambulance. I was like, all right, bro. And the medic was set up on that one too. I knew him too. So that has been kind of cool. That the guy who I started these events with, years ago, he did another event in Martin, Tennessee, where they UT Martin has a national champion rodeo team, and
Right. Yeah.
so I went up and worked his event, and that was really neat because my students went with me on that one because they could, I'm at Union, they can't go to the bar and work, in a bar, so
Right. Yeah.
I don't see those kids in there, but they don't come officially work with
Yeah.
me in the bar. And I had a guy with some broken ribs, chest injury, and it ended up being a skull fracture. So I was taking care of it, and thankfully we'd done the medical timeout stuff before that. I always make sure to do that to educate them. And the guy walked out. It was kind of funny. I walked out and put this guy, and this guy hadn't even been there, but he was the transport rig. And so I got him out, put him in the thing, and I walked back in to ask another question about something. I walked back out, and he's like, "Hey, did you come and speak at a EMS refresher we did a couple months ago?" I was like back in November. He's like, "Yeah, aren't you the athletic trainer guy, Jonathan, there in Union?" I was like, "I am." And he's like, "Well, dude, that was awesome. I never really worked with athletic trainers like this before." He says, "Like legit." He says, "You and your students are the real deal. This is awesome.
Yeah.
How do we do this more?" I was like, "That's what I want. Like that's
Right.
what." It's
Yeah.
not because I did well. I don't mean it like that. It's just that we get a chance to cause exposure and we get a chance to build. We get a chance to increase the community involvement. We get a chance to do all these things. And that's what the last one I didn't mention yet. That's the last new activity I do, right? Is like with the Winter Guard and you know, professional marching band, like the drum corps stuff. It's
Right.
the same idea. It's like how do I build thankfully DCI, which is based out of Indianapolis now, like all the other organizations like that, have really wanted to bring in athletic trainers. And I'm with Music City Drum Corps out of Nashville, and they emailed me on a whim like last November or last February, or yeah, last February. And they said, "Hey, we're looking for an athletic trainer in the area. Do you know some athletic trainers might be interested in marching arts and da da da?" And Crystal looked at me again. She's like, "You're dumb. You love that stuff. You marched all the way through high school and you love drum corps. Like, you should look into it." So I did. And I helped them out with and I got them actually a better place. I got them to come to my high school I work at so they would be close. So they would
Right.
do all their camp there. And they're coming there and get back again this year. I'm pretty sure. I hope that's the deal we had. And they're coming back. And then we and I've already signed the deal with them for this year too. And then so I did that, and then I went on tour with them a couple times, and this year I'll be on tour with them a little bit. But I got to go to I got to be in Indianapolis that second week of
Right.
August,
Yeah.
be at Lucas Oil and walk on Lucas Oil Field
Yeah.
in the DCI World Finals. And I was like, that's been a dream of mine forever. Kind of like the motocross thing. It's like God's kind of like, here, like you've had these things forever. Now I'm going to show you how to get there. And so now I've got other drum corps. So if actually anybody listening to this podcast, another shameless plug, if you're interested in doing some drum corps this summer, I got a couple weeks that need covered. If you want to travel, it's all
Yeah.
free. You get paid, I'll pay you. And then you get to travel and live on the road for a week or so and get fed and go to see all these cool
You're on
places.
the
So
road with the band.
right, right. And it's like which like yeah, we're like you're a total roadie, you're a total groupie with the band. Like total roadie tech guy. So but it's cool like that. You know, I told them when I'm on the road, like we don't need to necessarily have a nurse and other people, like I'll be with them so I can, you know, it's like what we do with our teams, right? I can cover the
Oh yeah.
ortho and the gen med and everything else. We're good. I don't need all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's interesting that I think that's the one thing and we've talked about before we started the podcast about Gen Med. Um, we're definitely not physicians. I mean,
no,
that's
not at least
not,
bit, right.
but cough, cold, um, unusual situations, that we see in sport a lot.
Right. Right.
I think we're fully capable of taking care of. And the story I tell, is that I had a female athlete. We're at semi-state. It's before the semi-state game, and she's got cramps.
Right.
And I just said, "Hey, I got something to take care of that." And I think she thought I was going to give her some meds and stuff and shove her out the door. And I did my little ice cup trick on her, and she went back and told the girls, she's like, "Troy's a witch doctor."
I've been called that before.
Yeah,
It's like
and
Mr.
so yeah,
Miyagi, like
exactly.
Mr. Miyagi and stuff.
But those are things, those are pearls that we've picked up in our
Right.
experience along the way that save somebody a
You're
lot
gonna have to
of
teach me that trick.
suffering.
That's a new one. I've never heard that one. You're gonna
Oh
have to teach
yeah, it's
me.
my superpower.
I do
Yeah,
have four
that's what I
daughters, so who
like my
knows?
daughter and her friends know about my superpower. I've had Carolyn's friends come over here like, "Can you
Right.
do that?
Fix them.
Can you do that? Can you use your superpower on me?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So,
So, well, we'll have to talk about that
and
later
it's very
on.
non-invasive. I mean, that's the thing
Yeah,
about it.
right, right, right,
But
right.
it's an ice cup trick, and they go away. And in
Well, I'll
fact,
have to keep
yeah,
that in mind. So
yeah.
that's awesome.
But the thing is that's it. I mean, and I think that is in as much of what you've talked about today, in as much that it's not so much about people kind of have an idea what athletic trainers do, but when we get the opportunity to demonstrate our knowledge base and our experience, and even if you're a young athletic trainer, maybe you don't know what to do, but you
Right,
have some knowledge base to do some things that are kind of out of the box and different comparative to what people think that we do. It is such an amazing amount of goodwill and promotion. There's not a poster, a website, a video that
right,
can do marketing for athletic training, like helping somebody feel better, do better, understand what our knowledge base is, those types of
right,
things. Because you just talked about, like, you get a tap on the shoulder, like you put a dude's shoulder back in,
right.
you're there, you're available, and then you get a tap on the shoulder that has now led to Friday and Saturday nights
A
taking care
lot.
of
It's
people.
like a lot for me. Yeah, and the possibilities of a lot more coming. So
Yeah.
which is awesome.
And
So
people are always watching. I don't care
right,
who it is
right,
or what it is that when something happens, they're watching. And we as athletic trainers, we need to be aware of that, not in a way that like, oh, I better do this or I better do that.
oh yeah,
But
yeah,
but know that when we are doing stuff, we're totally putting ourselves out there to demonstrate our expertise and knowledge to a group of people that may not understand that. And
right.
and we see it, it's easier to see it in the Super Bowl or college football and or maybe not. Now that we have the tent, they throw people in the tent
Right,
and
right,
do that. But I think it's important that they understand that we are capable of handling stuff in a professional, competent manner that puts us in a great light. And that to me is the biggest thing, especially as we're coming up on a National Athletic Training Month, is that
right,
there's going to be all these programs out there and stuff to promote athletic training, but the best thing that we can do is exactly what you're doing, is just you're personable, you have relationships, and you're out there doing it and you're taking care of people, and that's what people notice.
right.
um And all that
I
stuff is
fully agree with
important,
that.
but what you do from an individual, if you don't think you make a difference as an athletic trainer out there marketing the profession, you absolutely 100% do.
I fully agree with that, and that's what I try to tell my students all the time. Is like, you first off, you're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? And I put a lot into it, and I because I wanted to put into, I wanted to be there with those people that I was kind of going through it with. I wanted to be around the athletes. I wanted to know more and learn, and you know, good, bad, or indifferent, I liked being around Sean and Neil and those guys or whatever,
Yeah.
So just kidding, but like, some people will get this, and I sent that picture to you guys the other day. Crystal bought me the gopher, the Caddyshack gopher years ago to put
Yeah.
in my office because she said, didn't Neil have one of these in his office years ago? I
Yeah.
was like, he did. And so I have the gopher and my kids love it. They make it play every now and then. It's like, it's those types of things. And it's just those little traditional things. But anyway, but I think that there's so much to that. Like what's what I tell my students all the time is like, people are always watching, good, bad, or indifferent. Again, good, bad, or indifferent. People are always watching. So at least show them that you're competent enough to do who you are. And I tell them all the time too, like some of my students nowadays, I feel like they have to come out knowing everything, to pass that exam and know all these things. And like, I was like, guys, I've been certified for like 20 years or right about 20, yeah, I guess 20 years this year,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think about. That's
Oh yeah.
crazy to think about. So I've been certified for 20 years. I don't expect you to know, like, and I learned something new today. Same example. I learned something new today from you, right? Or I plan to learn something new here in a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit. And but it's like I don't expect you guys to know all these things and do this stuff. And like you pick up these pearls along the way. You pick up these different things along the way, and you go with it and you run with it and you think, oh, this works or oh, this doesn't work. And it's like, it's not cut and dry. Like, because I'll be honest with you, a lot of people would probably look at me the way I handle the bull riding stuff and probably, I mean, ATs I know would freak out on me because it's like, well, they got knocked out, so they have to leave on a spine board and stretchers like that. I was like, no, they're gonna wake up. Trust me, they're gonna hate me if I carry them out of here, and then not trust me and not want to come to me, and they're gonna
Right.
want to go up and throw their hand up and quote unquote cowboy up, and yeah, we'll go out back and we'll go in the other room and then we'll like break it down and we'll take care of it. We'll make it work, right? But if it's not an imminent death or imminent emergent threat, if I don't think they broke their neck, then by all means, let's get up. Let's get up and do this thing. And then like, my perception of athletic training or my how I treat athletic training is probably a little more aggressive at times than some of the newer people might be, but it's okay. Like that's how I learned. I won't lie. It's how I learned and what we did all those years ago, and it's still doing those things that are still safe and great for those students. And I love it. I love my profession, and I really started to love my profession. I got a new love for it over the last few years, even so, doing all these different kind of cool things. Like I said, God has just kind of given me like I get a random email not even intended for me necessarily for the drum corps thing, and that's awesome and cool, and that's going to be more food, more money and food for my family this summer, or this year. And I've got the motocross thing and the bull riding thing and the rodeo thing, and it's like all this stuff adds up, and it's like it's cool. My family loves it. Like like my kids are like, can we go with you to bull riding? I was like, you guys know you can't go with me to the bar. So I took him in there one time. So this will get me in trouble. I took him in there one time. It was a Thursday night, and they were going to do practice bulls. And my brother happened to be in town too, so I wanted to go. He wanted to see it, so I went to go show him. And so but it was like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, so it wasn't like it was a big deal. They weren't even open. So the kid's like, "This place is cool." I was like, "It is cool." I was like, "Now set up all those barrels over there and just watch." And they're like, "Okay," because I was out in the middle of the ring,
Yeah.
taking people and things like that or whatever. Like, "Are you always out there on the edge?" I was like, "Yep." And like, "What happens if a bull comes at you?" I said, "You see your dad move really fast up those rails, up those gates." And
Yeah.
so, I'm right there with it, just like I would be on a sporting event, and right there ready to get to if need be and do something. And
Yeah.
there's been a couple times where it's been like I call it the pucker factor. The pucker factor goes up pretty
Right.
high, but for the most part, it's like, "Hey, you good? Yeah, I'm good." Like, I'm pretty sure you got a concussion, but I'm fine, Jonathan. It's like, I know you're okay, but I'll see you next week. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you'll
Yeah.
be back next week. So it's like,
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do with it. So
No, no, and I think that's the thing you just brought up. You've got to be able to read the room. I think a
right,
lot of athletic trainers are measured by protocol and position statements and stuff, and all those things are great to
right,
protect us. I get that, but you have to read the room. You have to be able to know your population that you're taking care of and understand a little bit of their culture, and then try to mesh those expertise types things together and let them know that I'm really just trying to help you out.
Right.
But you're an adult and you can go do whatever you want to go do. You may not
Right.
get back on a bull tonight,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, I won't let
but
them back on tonight, but there's a good chance I'll see them the next day, or I'll
right,
see them because they
exactly.
went and
Yeah.
rode somewhere else the next afternoon. So,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing I think that especially your students need to understand is that
right.
we certainly do not want to like, oh, just ignore stuff, but at the same time you've got to be able to understand the people that you're working with. And that's the one thing, even at the high school level is we have laws and stuff in the state of Indiana in place that like that particular kid is not going to participate if they have what I suspect is a concussion. They're not going back in that day.
Right. Right.
They're going to get checked out and come back. But there are times that I had another girl get hit in the head today or this past weekend, and she, in my examination of talking to her and stuff, she was perfectly fine. But the referee wanted to know if she could get cleared to go back in. And he was asking the host athletic trainer, and I'm standing right there yelling at him, like, yes, she's okay to get back in. And then he's like,
She's mine. Yeah.
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 And he's all bent out of shape because I'm the one yelling at him. And I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, she's fine. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time and I'm
Right.
telling you, she's good. You don't, that person did not do her evaluation. I did.
Right.
And,
And
and
that
we were
18's
cool
gonna
at the
go,
end. Yeah.
right. That 18's gonna be like, Troy knows what he's doing. He's got it. Let him have it. Like, you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? It's his
exactly. And
kid. So,
that's the thing is that, we know we're lucky enough to know who most of our people are. You are too, but there may be a few outliers that come in there
right.
that you have to do
Well,
your due diligence with.
and you talk about meshing it, and that has happened. Like has happened over time. Like, you got the football kids who know that don't let Jonathan take your helmet. But if I'm taking your helmet, it's for a reason. And they all know that, but that's like the thing. But I'm sorry. Um, but like my bull riders, like I've been around them, a lot of them enough now that they know I'm gonna let them kind of be their piece, but I'm going with them. Like I'm gonna go out with them. I'm gonna stay. I was like, "Do you need me?" Like, "No, Jonathan, I really am okay." And I'm like, and now it's up to the point where I know, like, no, they're not lying to me. Like, but they're gonna come back. Like, can you come back? Like I got a couple guys like I'll be opening the gate for them to get out. You okay? They're like, yeah. They're like, can you come outside and look at me? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
like quiet under their breath. I'm like, yeah, that means they trust me. And then like, and I'll go work these bigger events. Like, oh, Jonathan's gonna be there. Great. Like, hey, are you coming to work this event? Like, I will be like, okay, good. Well, we feel so much better I feel so much better when you're there. I'm like, okay,
Right.
cool. That's a good thing. So,
Yeah. I mean, as we all know, I mean, healthcare is a huge trust. Um,
right.
it's a huge trust initiative between your patients, your clientele, and you. And when that when somebody else is there that they're not familiar with, it's tough.
Right.
And
And it really is. So,
yeah,
yeah, they're always like, well, are you Jonathan tonight? And like the guy who's gonna work for me on Friday is like, are you Jonathan tonight? And every time they ask me, he's like, I'm not Jonathan, but yeah, I'm gonna try and they like it's like I'm gonna try and act like Jonathan tonight. And they're like, well, you gotta grow the beard. Like you need a much bigger beard. And like and he's always laughs, but yeah, so it's in those kinds of things. So I like to be able to pass that on to my former students to kind of come work these things. And I still, so some of well, let me be a lot of it probably is like self-serving, like getting to go work these things and do these other cool
right,
new to me. But it also creates network for my students and chances up like they're all now. Like I got a girl from Germany right now. She was at when we like took care of that skull fracture kid, a guy with the up in Martin, and she's like, anytime Jonathan, you go work rodeo, can I please come? And so she got this German accent, and but she loves it. She's ate up with it. She's like
yeah,
ate up with like the chaos side of things with her athletic training. And it's just like I may have told you this the other day. I feel like it's, I like being an educator. I like doing what I do, but I felt like I've always been an educator. Like I've always, because I'm either educating my athletes or my coaches or my community on what I do for a profession and why I'm doing it and how we're going to go about it, and but now I get to truly educate students to create that kind of next generation of ATs. And um, it's fun to watch him go out there and like that quote was by what Kevin Spacey is who did it. I think is like, I've reached this spot in my professional life or professional practice and career that it's time for me to send the elevator back down. And I feel like I've been trying to do that for a while. And I like having multiple kids on multiple levels, like layers coming up
yeah,
behind me as mine still goes up, right? And that's the
right,
idea. And and I'm trying to they need to get on my level or our level. I don't mean it like that, but like, but I've done these things. It's like we know a few things because we've seen a few things.
yeah,
It's like those types of deals. So it's like,
yeah,
when
yeah,
the guy got his his main region stepped on and hurt. Like he's like, you got to look at it, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like that was he's like the people like you didn't even flinch when he said. I was like, well, what was I going to flinch about? Like this guy's in a great deal of pain, hurting, and he's trusting me to do that. I was like, okay, what am I gonna say? Well, no, man, I'm out. I was like, I can't do that, you know. So which is a weird random thing, but we had a bull rider. This would have been back in the spring. Yeah, it's the only time I ever got really worried with the bull rider, and it was back in the spring, and I knew that I'd seen the kid the other day at a bullfight at a bull riding fighting camp I was helping work out with. Again, got the connection through, and we were sitting there doing something with it, and the bullfighter is a really big bullfighter around here. He's really good, probably one of the best around here. And this guy got thrown, had a helmet on, stuff like that, but he hit his head. I mean, it was a pretty violent like wreck, and they call them wrecks. Pretty violent wreck, and uh, I didn't see him get stepped on, but I saw the video later on. He got stepped on really bad, and when I look up, I was sitting up on the rail, and the bullfighter looks up at me and says he's out. He's out. Well, that's not uncommon. But finally, he looks back down. He looks back up, and he looks at me and he says, "Johnathan, he is out." Like I'm thinking, oh no, because if that bullfighter is now like we have an issue, then
Right.
I'm like we have an issue. So I'm like, guys, we got to get this bull out of here. So I'm like, so I hurried up to yell. They opened the alley gate, and the bull got out. And I hurried over to the guy, and I got to him. When I got to him, he was on his back, arms by his sides, flat, motionless, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh no. And I thought, oh
Right.
no, we have a problem. And then all of a sudden he goes, "Whew," and like kind of threw his head up. And I was like, lay down. And he's like freaking out on me, like, because he's nowhere near, and fine. He just starts yelling. He's like, and he starts yelling, my balls, you know. And he's at, I realized the bullet stepped on him. The bullet stepped on him and pivoted right there in that
Oh
area.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
ripped him all the way through his jeans and everything. And like, it was bad. And
Yeah.
so I ended up, telling him he had to go to the hospital. But, I've had broken pelvises. I've had broken bones and numerous
Yeah.
concussions, and people take dirt naps a lot, so those
Yeah.
types of so, but it's just part of what I like to do. And
Yeah.
I don't think about it all the time. Like till someone like you kind of says something about it. It's telling people like what I do. It's not telling people, it's showing people what I do.
Right.
And it's like what's the phrase? People don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care type
Right.
deal or whatever. Um and that's what I try to do, especially with, again, bullfighting is a prime example, and motocrosses too. I don't see those kids very often, but I've got a lot of parents now that are advocating to get me at a lot of events around the country, and especially because it's all amateur stuff. Because,
Right.
how do we get you there? I was like, you just tell the event promoter to be willing to pay me, and we can discuss, and
Right.
I can get my license down there or hiring people for it or whatever. And and that's kind of that fun vetting process of what works to get people with me. And um, yeah, so there was something I was going to say with it too, but I can't remember
Yeah. And
about
we could have a
him.
whole nother podcast about how to start your own business. I mean, that's
I'm not doing great at it, but I'm not like making money hand over fist by any means. But like, it's not a full time gig yet. But I do so much. But I do. That was one of the things. Like you've been courting me, for that other thing that we've talked about
right.
numerous times, and uh, and that's why I told you I was like I would be giving up almost my same amount of salary, like
Right.
in extras, you know what I'm saying, if I were to do that, and which is good, which could be good, but again, maybe it's a chance to go rebuild it up other places and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
No,
just
I think you're in
part
a
of the
good
fun.
spot. I think you're in a good
I'm trying
spot,
to be. If
and
I
you
get that
can,
stupid paper finished, I'll be really good. I'll
yeah,
be in
and
a good
and
spot.
and
So
then you can still do whatever you want to do anyway. That's the
right,
thing.
right,
And so I think that's the important thing is that trying to find the things that you want to, you get to work a job and then get to do what you really want to do.
right,
And
and I've really gotten to that point
yeah,
now that like I joke that traditional sports are boring. Like after I work in motocross and bull riding a lot this past was it this fall or last fall? I think it was last fall, fall of 22. I just came home one night on a Friday night, and I was like changing clothes and going off to work bull riding right after that because it's like all at the same time. And we got done with football kind of early for some reason, and bull riding went to like 11, so I just changed clothes, and or no, it was like sorry the next day, and Crystal was like, "Well, how was last night?" I was like, "It was fine." She goes, "Anything happened?" I was like, "No, it was whatever." And I was sitting around there. She finally looks at me. She goes, "You're just bored, aren't you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She didn't mean about it. She's like, "You're bored with football, aren't you?" And I was like, it has gotten kind of boring. And she laughed and she's like, did you ever think you'd say that? I was like, no, but football was boring now. It's like not fast paced enough. I was like that's why I worked that sport. And down here it was like, oh, you're from Indiana, you must love basketball. I was like, listen, no knock to my Indiana peeps who love thump thump. And but I'm not a huge basketball fan. I'm a short little guy. Like I'm a short
Yeah.
little stumpy guy. I don't know. Basketball's not my sport. So anyway, but yeah, so it's been a cool ride so far, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to kind of come on here and talk
Oh
about it.
no, thank you
And
for doing
you
it.
kept telling me like, no, you got cool stories, you got cool stories. It's gonna be great. I was like, man, I don't have the history and background and heritage of those other people.
You got
But
stories. I mean, that's the
I
thing
got,
about it.
yeah, I could sit and talk stories forever, but I
Yeah.
got all kinds of stories. So,
No,
but
your
it's been a
stories are
cool.
great because I think it's what a lot of athletic trainers need to hear is that you can create your own you can have your job, but you can
Right,
create your own gigs,
right,
and just be present. And sometimes that's all people want you to do. And if you know what your interests are, then you can kind of guide it to do that. And um, I have some interest in doing some things just from connections in my college world that I'm pretty sure that's nobody's taking care of. And I'm just waiting for the opportunity to have a job like what you have, not the same job, but have a job
right,
that you have that would allow me to do those other things.
right,
Right now, I'm not there.
right,
Um, I'm a daily guy with the school that I'm at. But if the opportunity ever presented itself where I would not be that daily guy, but I would have different people I would take care of, and then have the opportunity to try to build what I want to build. Um, um, then I'm going to go for it.
no, I
Especially,
agree.
and you're the inspiration for that. But yeah,
Thanks. So I appreciate that. But it's like, well, it's like when I was at the CETA conference, Patty Tripp, who's going to be the new seated president, said, there's only 55,000 athletic trainers in our country. Like, if you think about that standpoint, how big are those gaps and where can we fill those holes, right?
right,
Where are the gaps and how do we fill them? And it's like, and I'm sitting there thinking like, I can fill gaps this way, and I grow
yeah,
my profession, understand it. And people are also too are like someone was talking about the D2 side of things, like they were down at the NCAA conference, and um, an AD or someone finally spoke up and said like, well, the D2 side of things, it's horrible because there's a job shortage out there for athletic trainers, and we can't find them, and blah blah blah. And finally, this other AD stood up and says, actually, no, the problem is there's not this shortage of them out there. There's ATs out there and they really want to work and they're really good at what they do. You all just are too tight and don't want to pay them what they're worth.
right.
And
And that's the thing.
he was willing to throw that like bomb in the room, and I was like, dang. And I was like, okay, cool. And
No,
so
the
anyway,
thing is that, and I've always said this, that there was going to come a time and a place where the market was going to dictate what our
right,
salary levels are. The
right,
market's going to dictate that.
right,
If you choose to pay whatever, 30 grand, 36 grand, whatever,
right,
and think that somebody's going to come in and just, and there always is, but to the level of quality that you expect,
right,
that's not going to happen. But if there's somebody like motocross out there or bull riding that says they see the value in what you're presenting and they're willing to pay a decent salary, and you can come in and work Friday and Saturday nights and make a decent amount of money that you can go,
right.
yeah, this is almost like a really easy part-time job.
It's an
I
easy
shouldn't say
part-time job,
easy,
right,
but yeah, but it pays well, so you don't
right,
mind doing it and it's fun.
right,
Then the market is always going to dictate that. That's America. That's the
right, right.
capitalistic type thing.
That's
And
exactly
so
right.
when they sit around, when all these academia people sit around and wonder or whatever, like I don't understand. There's a shortage and da 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 da. No, you're not. You got to catch up with the market. I mean, I've had
Right.
these discussions with Sean
Oh,
Comer at Ball State. I mean,
right,
and he gets it. I mean, he totally gets it. And then trying to relay that to other people, like, but but it's just academic institutions, because you work at one, um, they 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 live in another world that doesn't really
right.
understand market.
Right. Well, and I think that's part of it too. And I think it's also our job as athletic trainers to advocate, right? It's to tell cool, fun stories. It's to get people interested. It's to do things like like I got an email today, and I don't know who she is or why she is, but I got an email saying that 2 students opted to switch their major to athletic training for whatever reason. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, that's cool. Like, I don't know who they are. I was like, all right, well, so, and they get these little notes like, oh, I've decided to do athletic training because I really interested in having Mr. Allen in class, and he's got cool stories, and like, I really want to see how I can go fit into that realm and world. And, I think showing students like the opportunities out, or not even students, even certifieds that have been in this for a while that aren't happy where they are necessarily, but they still love what they do. They're just not happy doing it where they are. Okay, well then let's find a place where you might be. And maybe that's still staying in the secondary setting, in the college setting, but at a different institution. But maybe it's that no, you want to go work on Broadway and work performing arts. Like, I network and make connections all the time, like too much. Probably my kids are like, Dad, we'll never get Dad out of here. He's gonna talk to somebody, right? And
Right.
that for me, I'm like, no, that's okay. Like, it's like, I called a guy who knows a guy who called a person who said, how maybe I can get your students in to see the Rockettes and work with the Rockettes. I'm like, yes. Like, I have a student who got in and worked with at what Rehab Works or whatever it used to be down at Cape Canaveral,
Yeah.
right? At the Community Space Center. And now, if students go down there and work now, your athletes, your clients, they're the freaking astronauts. How
Right.
cool is that? Like,
Yeah.
I was like, it's not just the workers around there. You're working with the astronauts. People looking to go to Mars. Like, oh, I know that guy. It's like, yeah, I know that guy. Like, he's cool.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, so anyway, and it's all about building relationships. It's all about building. And I never thought about it that way. It's all about building things and building who you are. And I'm super appreciative of having such a strong foundation and multiple layers built on top of that from Ball State before I got there. And since, while I was there and since there, it's given me such a great firm foundation and broad reaching foundation to really build on with what I'm doing and wanting to go from there. And so I feel like I can do it. Like, I feel like I'm okay to go do that because yeah, I got the background to go do it. Let's do this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because what's the worst that could happen? I
Yeah.
mean, they're like, they don't want me. I'm like, all right, no big deal. So I'll go on
Yeah.
to the next person.
I don't
I was
I
like,
don't think I don't think that's gonna happen.
no. Well, thank you. So,
Yeah, I
anyway,
don't think that's gonna happen. Well, we need to wrap this up because you got a busy, busy day ahead of you.
yeah,
So,
I gotta be
so
traveling off to the next thing. So
yeah, so thank you for being on and I really appreciate your stories and it again, I think people are gonna catch wind of this and listen to this podcast and you might be getting a few more emails from people like how do I do this and how do I get involved and
I hope
whatnot.
so.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
so
happy. So Pillar Active Medicine, so PILLAR, so Pillar Active Medicine or Pillar Active Medicine LLC. It's on Facebook and Instagram. I'm horrible at doing that. I need to get better at it, but if people want to reach me on there, they can, or you've got my contact, or people want to get a hold of me, just I'd be happy to talk to people. And if you got people
yeah.
interested, and like I said, I encourage everyone to go those non-traditional routes if they're really interested to it. So, and just one last thing is I'm super honored that you were asking me to do this, and
No,
it's been very like daunting, and you keep saying we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. I'm like, okay, and I was
yeah.
like, then I listened to all these podcasts, and I was like, "Ah, okay, I'm not
Yeah.
on that level. That's how I feel. So, but I
No,
appreciate
no, you
you do
you're
this. So,
you've got a lot to offer, and it's I'm just glad that we can get your story out there,
thank
and
you.
again, it may be another there may be another time to do another one too,
Okay,
and
let me know.
and I'll let you know for sure. Yeah, but
All
so
right. Well, I appreciate you, Troy, a lot.
yeah, thank you. So we've gone
Yep.
off the roll with Johnathan Allen. I want to thank Johnathan for coming on the podcast. It was a great discussion and to spend time with him and talk about what he does, both on the academic side of things as well as what he's doing in these extra jobs that he is kind of finding himself more and more in these non-traditional type settings for athletic trainers, but still making a great impression for athletic trainers out there with a lot of different folks that we wouldn't think about needing athletic training services, but they do. And I think that's the great thing about what Johnathan's doing. And as he termed it, it was blood and chaos. Is that what he said? I think maybe there's a little bit of an adrenaline junkie going on there, but still pretty awesome stuff. And I think more people need to know what is out there available to them. If it's not a traditional sports setting or not a clinic setting or a hospital setting, or there's just lots of opportunities for athletic trainers out there. So again, give us some feedback on offtherollpodcast@gmail.com or offtherollpod1 on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, or reach out to me on my personal Facebook page. We got some great podcasts coming up here that the guests don't even know they're going to be asked yet. So they're going to find out here pretty soon. But again, thanks for listening. Please give us some feedback. Have a great day.